My name is Dax Marcus. I'm the Director of Operations at Trust SoCal.
And I am Keta Loren with StraitJacket Podcast. And today I have the honor of welcoming our guest, Joy, to the podcast. Hi, Joy. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And Joy is a incredible singer-songwriter, phenomenal guitarist. She works with an organization called Rock to Recovery, which brings music into rehabs and helps struggling addicts find passion in art and like have purpose with that. She has 8 years of recovery, which is absolutely insane. Yeah. A little background, I was actually one of her staff when she went through treatment 8 years ago. And I've gotten the pleasure of getting to know her over the past almost decade. And what an incredible human being. We're so happy to have you here.
Welcome.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your origin story. Where are you from?
I am from a small town in Louisiana called Natchitoches. I'll give you $100 if you could spell it.
Can I get $100 for trying?
No.
I just read it and I still can't spell it.
You just read it?
I just read it.
I have 5 siblings that I grew up with and 1 little sister that I didn't. My parents split up when I was super young, and it was fairly normal for a while. When I was 10, that was my first introduction to addiction. My older sister, she was 25 at the time. She overdosed, and she had her baby in the crib. So we got back home from out of town, and she had diaper rash for out. So it was just a really tragic situation. And then after that, it was just kind of picking up, right? It was I was only 10 years old, so I didn't really know how to cope with something like that.
Did she pass away?
Yeah, she passed. Yeah. I guess I didn't mention that part.
Yeah, that's incredibly tragic.
Yeah, so then, my mom adopted her kids and they lived with us, and it was just kind of trying to be normal family. My stepdad, he was an alcoholic, but he raised me. I called him daddy from when I was 2 years old. And he ended up aspirating at home by himself when we were also out of town. It was always kind of crazy. We were out of town every time that somebody passed. After that, I think I just became my mother's keeper. I just wanted my mom to be okay because I couldn't imagine what it was like to lose a child and the love of your life,
right.
So after that, before he died, I begged for a drum set for years, and obviously nobody wants to get a kid a drum set.
No.
The Christmas before he died, he got me a drum set, and it sat there forever because I didn't know how to put it together. I finally got some help, and I started this little 3-piece rock band in my hometown, and it was one of the best eras of my life. We were just kids playing music all the time and as often as we could. And I met this guy named Nick, and I started dating him, and he was kind of from a troubled home, and he did a lot of drugs with his family, and it was almost I was trying to rescue him in a way. And I think this rescuing mentality started kind of young with wanting to just help my mom and make my mom be okay. And he, he would get arrested in front of people, and people would think it was my drugs. And I was only 14 years old at the time. Yeah. So it was a lot of pressure from all angles, that this kid's not good for you,
Yeah.
And one, it was after him getting arrested a few times and going to juvie and all this. And I was super against drugs at the time because of my sister. And he, I told him I couldn't continue to be with him if he was going to do drugs. And he went home and he hung himself that night.
Oh my goodness.
So it was just I get knocked down, and then I get up, and then I get knocked down, and it was just one thing after another. And I think the first time I smoked weed, it was I went out to not feel. I just wanted to escape. And that just kind of, then it became okay, I'll play music, right? And then after a little time, the drugs took over, and I couldn't do anything besides drugs,
Was it just weed and alcohol to start? How did the trajectory look?
It was weed to start and alcohol on the weekends. And I remember when the alcohol started happening on like school nights.
Yeah.
And I was like, this isn't headed
Good.
anywhere good.
Yeah,
like
we
I
have evidence of how this turns out.
Yeah, I knew kind of where it was going to head, you know, and then the pills started, and then I lost 3 of my grandparents while I was in high school, and I just remember saying, fuck it, like, what's the point, you know?
Right.
And by the age of 18, I was addicted to Xanax, opiates, Oxycontin, and cocaine. And I took a bunch of pills, and I tried to kill myself right before I graduated. And I told my mom, because like the second I did it, I was like, fuck, I'm going to do this to my mom again, you know? So I told her, it was more of like a call for, like a cry for help, you know? It didn't.
But a serious attempt nonetheless.
Yeah. So after that, I went to treatment, and I think like, you know, I was introduced to AA, and like I knew it all. I could like quote that book to you. I was really good at being in the book and like learning and like knowing how to spit information back at you.
Performatively?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
But
we're not manipulative addicts. None of us are.
But I that was my experience with understanding that like self-knowledge, what does it say? Self-knowledge availed is nothing, or something like that. I had all the knowledge, but like the action wasn't matching. Yeah. And then I remember getting out of that rehab, relapsing within a few days, and then I'd go back, and I'd get a month, and then I'd relapse, and I'd get a month, and I'd relapse. And I just, once again, fuck it. Like I started hanging out at a bar doing like open mic night stuff, and started drinking, and got back. I met a guy that made meth in his bathtub. And
tell us about the bathtub. That's creative.
No red flags.
None whatsoever. Was it in a trailer?
Yeah.
A trailer bathtub. Okay, we needed the full picture.
Check all the boxes.
You know,
yeah.
and for the people who are listening and not watching, they need the full.
Well, I don't have a whole lot of recollection from that era of my life, but
for good cause. Yeah, makes sense.
But after that, it was just, I ended up losing my apartment, lost everything, and like I had to move back to Natchitoches with my mom. And like I remember going back, and like my other sister, her name's Mimi. I idolized her.
My sister's name is Mimi.
Is it really?
Yes.
Have we not discovered
I
this
don't
before?
know.
Her real name's Maddie. But
mine's Jamie.
That's cool. But yeah, she had gotten into meth when she was a lot younger, and she had been sober for a long time. Okay. And then she met a guy and ran off to Vegas, and
it's always a freaking guy.
Yeah. So
sorry, Dax. Sorry.
It's true. It's true.
Hey, women are just as bad, though.
They can be. I do have experience that I don't have.
Yeah. So I remember going back home and like being around her and her husband at the time, and I could tell that they were like high on speed. And I was like, well, this is just like where I come from. This is who I am, you know? And it just
there's no escaping it.
Yeah. I just thought that this was like my fate, you know? And so I just like ran with it, and I started at first, obviously she didn't want like me to be doing that. I just gotten out of rehab, you know? But
it never takes too much convincing, though. Like, you know, people like when you use with them because it makes them feel less like they're doing it alone.
Yeah, and I'm like manipulative as can be when I'm using, you know, like I convinced her that like I was going to be okay. And like, you know, I definitely played like a huge part in that. And, you know, her husband was the first person that like introduced me to a needle. And it was like, it took me off guard because like that's how my oldest sister had died. And I was like, whoa, that's like crazy that you would offer me that. But I was just at a point, and it was just like, why not? Like I like hated myself. Like I really just didn't see much point in it. Like every couple years, like I was losing people. I was constantly like in a state of grief. My mental health was shit. And I remember he felt bad like after he had offered it, and I'd kind of like reacted a little strangely, but then I wanted to go ahead and do it. They like shot me up with water for the first time. And I was like, no, this wasn't it, you know? So I go back to the guy's house that he had brought me to, and I was like on a 2-year run with this guy that I met.
Wow.
And
It's a long run with a rig.
Yeah.
Like usually they don't last. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the first time, actually, when I went back to after the water, I shot up, and within a week I was like in psychosis, like hallucinated
That's what I'm talking about.
an entire like party in my mom's backyard. I'm like digging through rocks looking for Xanax that I thought I dropped, you know, and then like 5 o'clock in the morning, I see my mom and our cop friend like walk into the backyard, and I sit up like nothing's going on, you know, and I just, hey, like, you know, how you guys doing? And, you know, they spotted my arms immediately and were like, look, if you don't check yourself into a place, we're going to check you in ourselves, like against your will. Yeah. So I went, and it was like, okay, now like I'm going to shoot dope like a lady, you know, like I'm not going to like end up in the psych ward in a week, you know, like I learned kind of how to like take care of myself a little bit so that wouldn't happen.
What did that entail?
Avoiding my family.
That makes sense.
Staying in my car a lot.
Yeah.
Staying
Hiding.
hidden. Yeah. And I think that just made it darker, you know.
Absolutely.
By kind of towards the end of that run, I was like staying in a camper with a friend.
Like
and
a fifth wheel?
I don't know what that is. It was a small camper.
Like a hitch onto a truck camper?
Yes, like it didn't drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In some field, you know.
Yeah.
And
somebody's property.
Yeah. As we do.
Yeah. So you know,
Was there running water?
No.
Okay.
I think like the table like flipped down. You know what I mean? Like there wasn't a whole lot of room for anything. And I'm trying to see after that.
How long were you there in the fifth wheel?
It's such a like
muddy
blur.
Yeah.
But I mean, we were in his house, and then I think he had lost the house, and then we were in the camper. So it was just a progression of losing and just kind of going where we could, you know. And this guy was like dangerous. Like I shouldn't have been hanging out with people like that, you know. And I think a part of me just was like searching for like placement, you know, like where do I belong, you know. And like I had felt like I think since I was like as young as I can remember, like I don't really didn't feel like I belonged, you know. I kind of had like a rough like relationship with my real dad, and then when I was at home, I had siblings that were addicted to drugs, and then my stepdad that was an alcoholic, and it was like I just felt like I didn't feel safe anywhere. And so anyway, back to where we were. I think after that, I ended up going to treatment again, and this was in Mississippi.
What triggered that treatment stay? Was it family again? Was it rock bottom?
I think I was around my family more.
Okay.
And they were seeing like how sunken in I was, and none of my clothes fit me, and like I was just a mess, you know. My mom was like, you know, you need to go to treatment or you can't stay here anymore, which I really wasn't staying there a whole lot anyway. But
yeah.
Excuse me. I'm trying to remember where I am.
Went to treatment in
Tennessee. Or Mississippi, yeah.
Mississippi.
So I remember she drove me there, and by the time I got there, it was like not wanting to go to treatment anymore. Like that was like a 4-hour ride. I had a lot of time to think. So she told me, you know, if I didn't get out, I couldn't come back with her.
Yeah.
So I went to treatment, and I was actually telling somebody about this the other day. They were like, I had gotten there and I was just angry, you know, and somebody had told me that when I got there, somebody had said that like, you know, that new patient Joy, she's not joyful, you know, and it was just like, I was a nightmare. And so I went through this program in Mississippi, and I really think like that I owe a lot of my like recovery to that place, because I think in a way like that's where my
Roots.
Like I got my roots there, and I found like people that really cared about me, and like I made a lot of really good friends there, and I like smiled a lot and like laughed a lot and played my guitar a lot, and
they got you a little joyful.
It did. It brought back a little bit of joy for me.
Found some hope.
Yeah. And then I got out of there and I lived in Mississippi for a while and worked at Guitar Center and like started playing music again. And then, you know, I got into online dating and I met a girl that lived in Arkansas. And we ended up being together for like 2 years or so. And she, you know, she would drive to see me on the weekend. It was a 4-hour drive, you know. That's lesbians for you.
Highly committed.
Yeah, she would drive like
no
4 hours.
U-Haul yet.
It didn't take long. But you know, after a few months, like I convinced my real dad, I call him Papa, that I wanted to go to college in Shreveport, Louisiana, which was halfway from my hometown and halfway to her. Mm-hmm. So I got a house there and he helped set me up, and I was in school, and like I just, you know, when I moved to be closer to her, the truth started coming out that like she was still married. Still living with the baby's daddy. She had 2 kids. And
the
she
husband.
was, yeah, we'll get there. Okay. But anyway, I, you know, moved closer and I found out she's one of the biggest dope dealers in Arkansas. And then it was like, I was getting high at her. I was like, all right, I'm going to show you, right? It's like, she didn't respect my recovery. Like, F you, you know what I mean? So it became
the way that we shoot ourselves in the foot sometimes.
I know, like that made any sense. Like I'm just gonna dig my grave to like
that's addiction though.
Hurt you.
Yeah.
You know?
Was it like a betrayal kind of a thing? You felt betrayed?
I mean, she knew I was in recovery. I'd been sober 9 months a year when I had met her.
It was a betrayal.
It was. You know, I had been sober for 9 months a year when I had met her. And she knew how involved I was. And like, I think I was still living in sober living or something at the time that I met her. So I move, and then, you know, we're getting high and drunk, and she's like, she just tells me the truth. She's like, you know, he's been raping and beating me for the past however long, right? And it literally broke me. I was like, this woman that like I love and I'm trying to protect is like choosing to stay, right? And at the time it just like, oh, it seems like she makes it seem involuntary, right? Like she doesn't have a place to go and all these kind of things. But the truth is, like, we always have choices.
We always have choices.
And I spent a lot of time, again, trying to like save her from this like crazy, like abusive situation.
Do you think that the compulsion to try to save broken people comes from the people that you lost when you were young that you couldn't save?
Oh, for sure. You know, like leaving, telling Nick I couldn't be with him and then committing suicide, like changed me like at a molecular level. Like,
and then you had your sister you couldn't save. You had your dad that you couldn't save.
Yeah.
You had all these people in your life that you were so young, and like, but your brain, your subconscious doesn't understand that. And so it acts in such a way that makes no sense because it's trying to fulfill this, being able to save this one person, right? And they come in so many forms.
Exactly. And I think like with the savior mentality, you almost attract like broken people.
Absolutely.
And if you know, some people will take and take and take, you know, and I like have a song that references that, you know, one of the songs that I still play today, that like people will drain you if you let them, you know. And I think that's where a lot of like my healing had to start, was like, okay, like you're going to continue to get taken advantage of if you don't heal. And that's one thing like I have worked a lot on in my sobriety, is like healing like this subconscious like belief that, one, that I'm God, that I'm even capable of saving anybody or changing anybody's like decision making, you know.
And taking that responsibility onto yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so heavy that it'll kill you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think there was a shift at some point between searching for someone who needed saving and realizing that you were the person you needed to save, to sort of therefore give yourself a platform to do what you do now?
Yeah. And I don't think, like I said, I think I did a lot of healing after my last treatment center, but with this one, like I really, I've put a lot of effort into like EMDR and therapy and like, focusing on like what makes me, right? And that's music. And I seek that out and I play music with people. And sometimes I do it for work, and sometimes I forget how healing it can be. But like when we wrote that song the other day, I think it healed pieces of me that like really needed that. It makes me want to cry.
I love
that.
No, it's absolutely so true. And when you do it, as a career, I think it's like gets put in this money-making box when like it's really cool if you can do that, but it also kind of strips it a little bit and it dishonors it in a way, but not in a bad way, but like you have to have time and space for just the art, not to be critiqued, not to be like, this is for nothing other than because it needs to exist and that's what I'm creating it for, and then be able to separate those two things, you know what I mean? Because that's the process that is really, really beautiful and cathartic and therapeutic,
Yeah. Hang on to the things that feed you.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. But take me back to, because we kind of glazed over the last treatment center to the last time you got sober. Was the treatment center before the last one? Was that the second to last one?
Yeah. So 3 is my lucky number. I've been to the psych ward 3 times. I've been to treatment 3 times. So it's, when I was like in this like really toxic like thing of trying to save this girl who was with this really abusive person when I wasn't around, but he had he had meth, so she she needed it.
Sale.
Yeah. That's how you get them hooked to you. But I think after she told me like that she was getting beaten and raped and all that kind of stuff, I like drank myself into my 3rd psych ward.
Explain that to me.
I remember it being so painful that any time that I could like take a breath, I took a drink of alcohol,
I think that's a lyric. Took a drink instead of a breath.
I just remember being in a car ride like back from, we were in New Orleans when she told me, and I was just devastated. To learn that like someone you love is like going through that,
Suffering.
Yeah. But I think in a way, like she wanted me to feel that for her. And I mean, we're all flawed humans. We all have our thing. And like, I don't hold that against her or whatever. Right. It's like she was sick. I was sick. We were all fucking sick, Right. But after that, I think people started to really see what was happening, and like, and I was insane. And anytime I would go home, my mom would call the cops on me because I was just a nightmare.
Can you walk me through the psychosis part? The pieces that you remember?
I mean, I remember it was so, I would end up in places with really like dangerous people and like seeing like shadow people and like other people's hallucinations becoming your own, and like it just got worse and worse and worse. And like I in that relationship with my ex, I remember there was a couple instances that really changed like the direction of where I was going to go. And one of those was when I punched a window. I like went through her phone, and it could have been a hallucination, who knows, but I was like, okay, she's cheating on me. And I left, and then I go back to the house and she locks me out. And so like I punched the window, and I had to have I tried to cover it up with a tattoo, but I had to have 35 stitches in my arm. And I remember when that happened, my oldest brother, who ended up becoming bipolar schizophrenic due to meth use. Yeah. He had done that when he was at the age I was at that time, and he was.
So you saw your future.
I did.
Yeah.
And it scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Because he was more of a physical artist. Like I play, music, but he had to learn how to do it with his other hand after that. And I remember my arm being all bandaged up, and I was like, I'm never going to be able to play guitar again. Like I thought like I cut nerves that were not going to work for me anymore. Yeah. And it was really scary. And I, another one was when I was like so insane, and I had like one needle that I'd been holding on to for who knows how long. And I remember bawling that like I couldn't stop, and it was so defeating, and I was just so desperate and miserable. And I remember like jamming it into the wall to break it, and then I was like mad at myself for doing that, because then I didn't have a needle. And that's one moment that was like, I've got to do something. Like I'm gonna kill myself, if I don't do it with like drugs, I'm gonna do it myself, because I absolutely like hated who I had become. And I think when I got sober that time, I think it did come to, my mom was terrified. Yeah. My whole family was. And I remember calling my mom after I'd gotten a fight with my ex, and I just said, I just called to tell you I love you. And like, she could tell like something was really wrong. And like my plan was to like run my car off at the road into a tree. And she dropped what she was doing, and she drove up there to get me. And then I wouldn't get in the car with her. I was like angry and throwing things and like just wouldn't go. And then she drove back home, and then I was like ready to go home again. So she drove 4 hours back up there to get me and brought me home to Natchitoches, and then put me on a plane the next day to California. And I think that there was 2 people that I was using with continuously at the end, and they've both dropped dead. Their hearts just stopped working from doing so much meth. Those are the only 2 people that would like let me use how I wanted to use, because I was so insane and I wanted to get as high as possible, and it really didn't matter if it was going to kill me or not. Yeah. But yeah, my mom like put in her phone number or something on some hotline online, and none of the places in Louisiana would take my insurance for some reason, and somebody from California called and was like, hey, we'll buy her a plane ticket if she gets on the plane tomorrow. So I got on the plane, almost brought needles on the plane, because that's where I was in my life. Thank God, like I changed my mind at the last minute. I was like, oh yeah, they have like metal detectors, like they're going to see this.
Jail or rehab? We're going to pick rehab. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I got to California, and I went to a place in Fallbrook, and they ended up not having like the certain accreditation for my insurance, and a guy named DC drove to Fallbrook to get me. And I was also like so intoxicated that I lost my guitar that I brought with me. And so DC pulls up to get me, and somebody from the airport pulls up behind him with my guitar. And I had my guitar to come back to Orange County, and like the whole way to Orange County, me and DC just talked about music and the law of attraction and sobriety and like and just life, and I think I might have mentioned that like this was my 3rd time in rehab, and my parents aren't going to pay for it again, and so he drops me off at the rehab, and he comes back 3 days later, and he's like, hey, like I talked, this is all the paperwork, like we're going to scholarship you through our program. Wow. And so they did, and I ended up going through their outpatient as well. I ended up in this like insane sober living with like a hot tub on the roof and like pool tables and like just an elevator. Like I was like, what the fuck am I? I was like, who needs an elevator?
On a scholarship, if that's not God, then I don't know what is. If that's not evidence of God working in your life, like here,
right?
Please take this gift.
And that was the thing, is I felt so low and undeserving. And all of these like really beautiful things kept happening to me. And I was like, why? Like I didn't feel deserving. I didn't feel like I had done anything good like in this lifetime, you know? Yeah. And
it's undeserved grace.
Yeah.
It's undeserved grace.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
And I you know, and then I found the music meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, so they have an AA meeting where people go and play music? I was like, that's not real.
For 2.5 hours. It's a long meeting.
Well, the first one was at C3 Vapor.
I remember.
Do you remember that one? That one was so cool.
Yeah, that was way back 2016, 17. Yeah.
Yeah, we got kicked out of that place because there was so many people.
Yeah.
And like they would bring treatment centers and it was just wild. It was like young.
Like, get out.
Yeah. But now they have the, you know, the Howe Hall music meeting.
That's been there for 20-something years, I think.
When is that one?
It's on Sunday at 5
p.m.
to 7:30.
I live right down the street from that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's long, but it's just so full of love that like I feel
you found a home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Tell me about what you think was different this time.
I think I was just ready to save me. And I had spent most of my lifetime trying to do that for other people. And I just got to a place where like my family wasn't up worried at night anymore. You know, even though I was across the entire country, they knew I was okay. And I just like, I don't know. I think I just, since I was little, like I wanted, like I said, I wanted placement. And I think that music meeting really helped me find that. I was with people that like genuinely loved me and we all had a passion for music. Yeah. And,
Common
you know,
denominator.
Yeah. And, you know, I met Joe and like we started our band. I have an acoustic band called Unloly Creature. In the big book, it says an unlovely creature, or wait, an alcoholic in his cups is an unlovely creature. So that's where the name came from. And
I remember the first time I read that in the book after I'd known the band name for quite some time. I was like, that's where that's from.
Yeah. It was actually a song name first. And
okay.
We couldn't figure out, it was like Joy Wiltz and Friends for a long time. I was like, we gotta come up with something.
Yeah.
So I started playing there and like I ended up going back to work at that treatment center that I was scholarshiped through, and I worked there for a few years.
Full circle moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what an honor, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we're given a few gifts along the way, and it's like to kind of breadcrumb us and let us know we're on the right path.
Yeah.
But sobriety and recovery and dealing with mental health is not, and, you know, it's not a cakewalk. And, you know, I think what we don't get to cover is sometimes, you know, the difficult things that we do have to walk through because it's not clickbait, you know what I mean? And so what is the most difficult thing you have walked through sober? And how did you stay sober through it?
There's 3 significant things that jump out at me. And I think one of them that was pivotal for me not playing God and saving people was I flew she was scared to fly, but I bought her a train ticket out here to get her sober. I got her into rehab and she left on foot the next day, and came back to my house, and I said, look, I've worked way too hard to get this life, and like you can't take that from me. So I said, you need to be gone by the time I get home from work. And she was, and you know, 5:00 the next morning she calls me frantic. She's like, Joy, I need you to come get me. And she's in LA and she's been jumped by a gang and I don't even know, like I guess the guy like pulled a knife out on her and she pissed herself. She thought she was gonna die, you know. So I had to go get her, and like it was just like, this is like not
exhausting.
Yeah, I was like, I'm so far from this now.
Yep.
And so anyway, I sent her home and haven't spoken to her since. So that was one.
And that was it. How long sober?
That was probably 3 years.
Okay.
You know, and then, you know, when I got out of treatment the first time, I got a little dog, and her name was Sandy. And she, you know, I felt a lot of guilt because I ended up getting messed up and left her outside one night, and she got attacked by a dog. And we had to have her leg amputated. So I had a three-legged dog for a long time, and she passed last January. So I had her for 13 years.
Yeah.
And that was hard.
Yeah.
And then just this past, you know, I mentioned that I had a brother that had bipolar schizophrenia. He struggled so long with voices, and he couldn't tell us what the voices said. And my mom would come visit me, and she would wake up to 50, 60 text messages, like just ranting about these voices. And he was so like haunted.
Yeah.
And, you know, this past Christmas, he had been on his meds, and he was doing really well. And like, we had this really beautiful Christmas with him. And like, he hasn't been allowed at my other brother's house in years. And he came, and we played the heads up game, and he was really good at it, and he loved it. And you know, I got some videos of him playing with the little girls and stuff, and my nieces and nephews. And you know, I came home on December 31st, so that I could spend New Year's with my girlfriend. And my mom calls me, and she says, "Joy, Jason choked while eating, and we've lost him." And while I'm on the phone, they revived him. And sorry, it's so fresh, it's like really hard. But the first ambulance that they called didn't have the right equipment to help him, so they had to call a second ambulance. And by the time that second ambulance got there, he's 15 plus minutes without air. Yeah. I think it was handled poorly, which is a whole nother layer to this. He's a trauma patient connected to a life support machine who's seen through telehealth, you know. So anyway, it's a whole nother thing, but he just wasn't getting better. I mean, when you're that long without air, it's very slim chances. So my mom was like, "Joy, you need to fly home, and we're going to take him off life support." So I did, and we did that, and it was like, we had an honor walk because he was going to donate his organs, and it was so beautiful how many people showed up. That was really hard. I think I went through a lot of grief when I was so young, and this is the first like person like so close to me that I've lost. And like, this year's been really hard. And I think, I mean, it's definitely the hardest it's been so far. And I've struggled a lot with my like mental health this year. But like, I haven't like thought to use, which is insane.
Protection.
Yeah, you know, and like another thing is, like I mentioned, like I work in, with music. I do rock to recovery, so I take music instruments into treatment facilities and write songs with clients. And a lot of, I do a lot of like adolescent groups. Yeah. So with kids that start having mental health issues at the same time I did, so it's super easy for me to like relate. And a lot of them want to do silly songs, but sometimes like, you know, we get some like real stuff in there. And like, you know, I think one of the most like meaningful ones that I've written was, there was a girl in there that, I feel like I'm jumping all over the place, but
no, you're good.
There was a girl in there that she said today is 1 year since my suicide attempt. And I said, well, let's write a song about all the things you would have missed if you would have killed yourself. And she just like wrote it and broke down crying. And it was like so healing and so moving. And like, I think sometimes it's hard for me to show up at 100% with my mental health like this year, but I do, and not 100% all the time, but I do. And like making that difference in other people's lives is like what carries me a lot of the time, you know? And I've got really good people in my life. I've got an amazing girlfriend. It's just like life is really beautiful even when it's like really dark.
I just want to say how good you're doing, because grief took me out.
Yeah.
I lost somebody close, so close, and I didn't stay, you know, and I know that has been the trigger point for so many people. So even when you feel like you're not doing so well, maybe like you're doing better than you think. And I want to like really give you your flowers in that regard, because it's not easy to walk through. Being sober means taking life at face value, experiencing the full spectrum of emotions that comes with it, from high to low, from hell to heaven, and being able to navigate all of the fluctuations. And there are levels to the human experience that like you don't even know exist until they hit you in the face, and you're just like, what the was that, you know? Yeah. So being able to walk through that, it gives you the experience to maybe help the next person, because a lot of people don't make it through situations like that with time still on their belt, you know? So yeah, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
You have a beautiful story.
Yeah,
honestly.
You definitely do.
And it sounds like a sponsor told me that I needed to find a way to turn my suffering and grief into something positive, and it sounds like that's what I'm seeing when I look at your story from a bird's eye view. And that moment when you were in the car with DC and your guitar showed up and he showed up and they scholarshiped you and you talked about life and music on the way to this treatment center, I can't stop thinking about that. It's just like it's like a scene out of a movie, you know. To me, it's like this moment in your life where everything came together to give you a shot, you know. And I just think it's beautiful that you're doing what you're doing with the music and helping everyone else. And
thank you.
So thank you.
And I think it's like, it's funny that you bring that up, because like, you know, DC, he, this was also really hard for me. This happened probably a month ago, but he ended up killing himself sober.
Yeah.
So it's been that scared me. Because it's like, wait, people can get there sober, you know?
Yeah. At 10 years.
Because of like how like bad I felt. Like it's like, that's scary. Like I don't want to get there. And I think like I'm having to work like extra hard to like bring myself out of that. And like I mentioned that song, Keta came over the other night in her pajamas and I'm in my pajamas, and we're like, we don't want to do this, like, but we're here. And we wrote this beautiful song about depression and like how crippling it can be, and how, what was I'm under the pressure of my skin, or something.
The weight of my skin.
The weight of my skin. And it's like,
skin is so heavy.
It is. And it's sometimes it's so hard to get out of myself because of that. And like, so I just like want to thank you for showing up for me lately.
Always. And I always will.
Thank you.
What do you have to say to the addict or alcoholic or person who's struggling with their mental health that's listening right now, that feels like there's no hope, there's no way to move forward?
You know, I've been in a place where I've felt like hopeless, you know, and it's so overwhelming feeling that is like my reality in that moment. But the actual reality is there's always hope if we're still breathing. Mm-hmm. And I think like, you know, that 1,000-pound phone, or for me, it's like I've been so in myself that I have to reach out and ask how other people are, because maybe they're doing worse than I am, you know, and like, we are we need each other. I don't know what the word is. We're social beings. We need human connection.
We need connection.
And I know for me, when I get so depressed, it's like I feel so disconnected and I feel so alone. And that's like not the reality. That's my perception.
Depression is a liar, and it tells you that you're by yourself and it's always going to be this way. And it's just not true whatsoever.
Right.
It's not true. And, you know, I think that's one of the most beautiful things is like we share so many things that when, like through the experience of grief that I had, like I was able to know, like, let me check on Joy. Let me, you know what I mean? Like, let me show up and like, see where you at, what's going on, what's in your head, you know? Because I hadn't experienced like a devastation to that degree before. I didn't know how deep it could go and how much was needed. And so we learned through those experiences how to show up for each other, you know? And so, but, yeah, we are so grateful that you came on and shared your story today. Yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for making it so much easier with a camera in my face.
You're welcome. And this episode is actually going to be dedicated to Daniel Hollenbeck, and all the people that he helped and the lives that he's changed will not be forgotten. And that's it for this episode of StraitJacket Podcast. We'll see you next time.